Hello, sophomores. I hope you're all safe and healthy. What I've decided to do here is create a series of videos for each week that we're not in class. The assignment that you guys have been given is a reading from StudySync, one reading a week with some questions attached. And one of the things that I was seeing that maybe is lacking is that extra element of having a teacher explain some things and adding some commentary and just to help with the general understanding of the text as well as what's being asked of you. So what I've decided to do is put together these videos each week. I'll post one that'll be directly linked to the text that you've been asked to read for that week, and then you'll hopefully be able to have a better understanding of the text that we're looking at, and also the skills that we're hoping you will gain from those. So you'll have to leave me some comments in the Google Classroom area. I won't leave a comments area in YouTube, but in the Google Classroom area, I'll leave that comment area open, and you'll be able to just let me know what's working, what's not working. If you have any questions about any of the material, feel free to leave those questions in the comments. And also, this is just a good opportunity for all of you to hear my voice again and see my face, which I'm sure is at the top of your list of things you're missing about school right now. So, my class left off before the shutdown right at the end of Unit 3, which was called Technical Difficulties, and we didn't exactly get to all the things that I wanted to, but life happens. So we started Unit 4, and so at the beginning of this video, I'll just introduce you briefly to Unit 4, entitled The Human Connection, and introduce to you the driving question for the unit, and also that will lead us into our first text for this week, which is called Civil Peace. So once again, the title of Unit 4 is The Human Connection, and as you can see from my lovely picture there, it's all about what connects us as human beings. And the driving question is this one: how do our interactions with others define us? So we'll be looking at a variety of texts that look at some of the things that define our relationships and interactions as human beings through a wide variety of different relationships. So I put a few questions there for us to think about, just different interactions that we have. So how do our interactions between family members affect us? How do our interactions with friends affect us? How about as leaders and as followers? I know that several of you definitely would classify yourself as a leader, while others of you would classify yourself as followers, and those are kind of, we switch up those roles every so often, so we'll think about those, and also between perhaps a savior and the ones that are saved. So that leads us into our first text, which is called Civil Peace, and it's a short story by Chinua Achebe, and we'll get right into that. So first off, I have your 5 vocabulary words. I would invite you to, if you have some sort of notes that you're taking still, to go ahead and write these down as notes. And I guess I should say that in this video, I'm assuming that you've already read the material, but certainly if you haven't, this will definitely help as well. But here are the 5 vocab words. So we have amenable, which is willing to agree to something. We have commiserate, to express sympathy for someone's troubles. Destitute, which is someone who's very poor or impoverished. Ruffian, that's how you say that one, a strong, violent person or a bully. And then lastly, scrounge, which is to try to obtain something through stealth or through the offer of others. And if you are writing these down as notes, good, I applaud you. But you can go ahead and pause the video now to do that, and I'll go ahead and move on. And you can move on when you're ready. So first off, a bit about Chinua Achebe. So Chinua Achebe is a Nigerian writer, professor, and critic, probably most famous for his book Things Fall Apart, which turns out to be one of the most widely read books in African literature. Although he's been criticized in the past for writing in English, he decided to do that, he says, because he was able to reach a wider audience that way. It was important to him to do that. And a little bit of background about the short story itself. So in 1967, the region of Biafra in Africa, a part of Nigeria, decided to break away from Nigeria, and that caused what is known as the Nigerian Civil War. And eventually Biafra lost, and Nigeria took the region again as a complete country. But this situation, as most wars, and especially civil wars do, left the country in disarray in a lot of ways. And civil peace picks up then right after that war is over. And of course, that's when we pick up with our main character, Jonathan, when he is basically picking up the pieces of his life, gets to work right away, his family as well, in kind of making sense of things and just kind of sorting out their life and surviving after the end of this war. One of the things that I want to focus on as we talk about civil peace is cultural context, and that's extremely important when it comes to this short story. In all literature it's important, but especially in this short story. So some of the things that you want to understand when you're looking at cultural context is the time period, the nation, geography, and climate. And those are some of the things that we just talked about with this taking place in Nigeria, in Africa, and in the late 1960s. Another thing to consider is the use of language, especially in this work. Some of the speech patterns are interesting. When we look at how Jonathan talks versus especially how the thieves talk who come to his door, we can definitely see a difference in their patterns of speech. While both seem to be English, there definitely is a change there, and that definitely lends to the cultural context of the story. And also with word choice, and you'll see that words that seem to be spelled incorrectly for us are done that way on purpose, so that we can better understand, better hear in our minds what these people sound like. Other important things for the cultural context include religious beliefs, different celebrations and political events, especially when it comes to wars, as we're looking at, economic situations, different things that have helped define the society. That's important to understand. And then lastly, music, art, technology, different literature are ways that we understand these people's ways of life. So this is a map of Nigeria, just so you can understand a little bit better. We have a map of Nigeria, and then that lower green area, Biafra, is the part of the country that was seeking to separate and which led to the Civil War, just so you can understand a little bit better about that. I'm now going to show you just a few pictures that were taken, and these were posted in an article at a look back at the Nigerian Civil War, and I think it shows us a little bit about the world in which these characters are living, and helps us to have a better, again, cultural context. So just look at these images, and I think especially if you've already read the story, you'll be able to gain a better understanding, a better sympathy even for not only Jonathan and his family, but also for the thieves. Okay, so there are two main takeaways that I'm going to look at in this video. And this video is already turning out to be a little longer than I thought it was going to be. So we won't take too much time on them. But the two takeaways that I want to look at are, one, Jonathan's attitude. And then the second one is this phrase that's repeated several times in the text. And we know that when something's repeated in a text, it's definitely important. Important to the author and something that he or she wants important to the reader. So this phrase, nothing puzzles God. I'll just put this question up. This would have been your blast question for the week if we were doing this in school. So I just want you to think about this. How can optimism carry us through trying times? I think it's kind of relevant to our situation right now as well. But optimism, if you're not sure what that is, that seems to be a sense of always looking for the positive. Glass half full kind of a deal versus glass half empty. So how can optimism carry us through trying times? And that leads us really into Jonathan's attitude towards this whole thing. Right from the very beginning, this quote that I've posted comes from the first paragraph. And right from the very beginning, we get an understanding that Jonathan is an optimist. He has a positive attitude about the challenges that he's facing. So look at this quote with me. It says, "Happy survival meant so much more to him than just a current fashion of greeting old friends in the first hazy days of peace. It went deep to his heart. He had come out of the war with 5 inestimable blessings: his head, his wife Maria's head, and the heads of 3 out of their 4 children. As a bonus, he also had his old bicycle, a miracle too, but naturally not to be compared to the safety of 5 human heads." So we get a sense that Jonathan definitely knows what's important. He considers the bicycle a miracle, that it hasn't rusted and that it's still there when he unburies it. But for sure, what's most important to him is his family, and that he and his family survived. And it's not that they didn't pass through hardship or trials, right? I mean, we get in that quote also that he did lose a child, and you can see from those pictures that I showed you earlier that there's a variety of ways that could have happened during a civil war where a lot of people were starving to death. But he is grateful for what he does have, and I think that that's something that the author really wanted to relate, was the positive attitude of Jonathan, and he doesn't just sit back and consider it. Okay, those are my blessings, then that's it. He and his family both, they just push forward right away, and even after the encounter with the thieves, the next morning, what are they doing? They're back to work, and I think that's those two things are important for the author. And the other thing I want to look at with you is this phrase, "Nothing puzzles God." We get it various times throughout the text, and I just put 2 examples here. The 2 examples say, when he dug the bicycle up again a year later after the surrender, all it needed was a little palm oil greasing. "Nothing puzzles God," he said in wonder. So that one comes from the very beginning of the story. And then we have this next one that comes from the very end of the story. So you can see that although we had this incident with the thieves, his attitude hasn't changed. "I count it as nothing," he told his sympathizers, his eyes on the rope he was tying. "What is Egg Rasher? That I depended on it last week? Or is it greater than other things that went with the war? I say, let Egg Rasher perish in the flames. Let it go where everything else has gone. Nothing puzzles God. And of course, he's talking with the Egg Rasher. He's talking about that extra money that he had been able to get from the government um, by trading in this other currency. And yeah, I mean, his ideally, he's saying that I didn't have it last week, anyways, and so it's not making a difference now. I'm just going to keep working, and my family, and that's the way my family's going to be able to survive. But this phrase, nothing puzzles God. Just take a minute and maybe think about what that phrase might mean, and I'll tell you what I think it might mean. So when it comes to the phrase nothing puzzles God, we can certainly look back at the cultural context again. Remember that an important point of cultural context is religious beliefs. And certainly for Jonathan, one religious belief that's important to him is this idea that nothing is a mystery to God. And this higher power that he believes in is taking care of him, right? With the bicycle, with surviving the thieves during the night, nothing's a mystery to this higher power, to his God. And so we can see that that's important, most likely not important only to Jonathan, but important to the culture and the people that he's around. So those were kind of the two takeaways that I think, hopefully, having talked about those two things, they're going to help you to answer the 5 questions on StudySync. And again, if you have any more questions, I'm open to answering them. I'll just leave you with these last 2 questions, these last 2 thoughts, which bring us back to the driving question for the unit. So how did Jonathan's interactions with others impact him? And then secondly, how does reading about Jonathan's interactions impact us? And I think that really is the biggest question. I mean, that's what we're striving for in this unit, is to better understand those human interactions for ourselves by looking at it in others, even when it comes to fictional characters. So that's what I have for you this week. Again, any questions or comments, anything that you hope maybe would make these videos better, and try to make them the best that they can be, obviously. Hopefully they're at least a little bit interesting to you, and hopefully they lead to a better understanding of the texts. But yeah, shoot me an email or leave a comment in the comment section on Google Classroom, and I'll see you next week. Well, I won't see you, but you'll see me.